Um, Welcome to Mazévo Connect. We do these every month. My name's Brian Peck. I'm on the sales and marketing side here at Mazévo, and we're excited to be doing this month's webinar on user access. This is maybe one of the less glamorous aspects of Mazévo. I don't know, it seems like it is to me, but maybe you like it. Yeah, we've got some really good stuff here to share with you today. Before we do that, though, I've got just a couple of announcements. I want to welcome a few new customers into the Mazévo community. It has been a busy summer for us here. A lot of new customers coming on board. We are super excited about that. The newest ones since our last webinar are Sampson Community College from North Carolina, Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, and then just this morning, Roanoke College from Virginia joins the Mazévo community. And so three new customers. I don't know if we have any of those folks on the call here today, but if you are on the call, welcome. We're excited to have you. And and as we get close to, usually once we get around the July timeframe, a lot of you kind of start your next budget year in July. And so there's a lot of times people are timing their purchases with that time frame and things like that. So we definitely notice it here. And so it's been a great summer. I know Joe and Angela and Matt are just busy right now with doing a lot of onboardings and things like that. So it's really good to see the new faces here. Also wanted to mention that just on Monday, some of you may have received an email from us. We were doing a customer service survey, and if you filled out that survey there, we really appreciate it. Just giving us some feedback on how we're doing on the customer service side. Something many of you know we are very dedicated to, and we focus a lot on that. We always want to make sure we're doing our best there. So if you did see that survey email, thank you for filling that out. It'll be open until July 10th for that there. So before we jump into it, I'll introduce on the call here. I'll stop my share for just a second so you can kind of see all of our shining faces here. I've got a few of my Mazévo colleagues on this call here today. I've got Claire DeGroat, who works with me on the sales team here, and Morgan Nowak as well. And then we've got our training staff, which is Angela, Matt, and Joe as well. And then, of course, our CEO, Dean Evans. So it'll be pretty much a team effort here as we go through today's topic, which is user access. And we've done this webinar topic a couple of times in the past, and it does always seem to be kind of popular with folks because user access is one of those things that it's kind of easy to forget about. And, once you kind of get people set up, you get into your day-to-day grind. And what we see a lot of times, and I think this happens for a lot of folks, is that over time, if you're not careful, everybody in your system starts kind of becoming a global administrator. Or maybe that's the way you kind of started things there. And we totally get it. I mean, if you think about how that happens, right? It's not that you start out with that intention of like, oh yeah, I'm just going to make everybody a global administrator in my scheduling system. It's just over time, somebody needs access right away. They need access quickly. And it's like, what kind of access do I give them? And you don't want to be standing in the way and slowing anybody down. So you just check the box, make them a global admin. Now they can get in there and do their job. But that could have some downstream ramifications where, now they have a little bit too much access. And the main problem with that in a system like Mazévo is that opens the door for mistakes. It's not that typically anybody would go in there and do anything malicious in the system. It's more that they, just go in and didn't understand the ramifications of what they were doing, and they checked some box or did something, and things kind of come off the rails. So the purpose of this webinar is to give you some simple tools or ways to think about security in Mazévo so that if you recognize yourself in that scenario where you've got a whole bunch of global admins that don't necessarily need to be, that there's some easy ways to go in there and correct that and start moving that in the right direction so that you don't run into any of those mistakes down the road. So the way we'll go through this today, like I said, we've got various presenters here from the Mazévo staff. Joe's going to lead us off, and he's going to talk about the primary access roles in Mazévo and what those do. He'll be followed by Angela, who will be talking about some of the other roles, more specialized roles that you can give folks in Mazévo. Matt will then follow and talk a little bit about requester security and how you can control the types of requests and the rules around requests that you're taking. And then finally, Dean will finish us up and talk a little bit more about the user management side and just some various topics related to that. So if you've been to these before, you kind of know how the flow of these works. As we're going through things, we definitely encourage you to ask questions because you probably will have questions. And you're welcome to put those in the Zoom chat. So just type your question in there and we will respond to those and monitor the chat and get to your question that way. I also expect too, we'll probably have a few minutes at the end where we can also address your questions then if you want to unmute yourself. And if it's easier to ask your question that way, you can do that. So anyways, without any further ado, I will go ahead and turn things over to Joe, and he'll start talking about the roles in Mazévo.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate that. I am going to share my screen, and I have just a little bit here. So as Brian said, a lot of what he said kind of, again, just reiterate. Don't make everybody a global admin. I know we do know how easy it is at the beginning, but this is why we do this kind of training. So you can kind of understand, well, maybe I don't have to give somebody global admin because I can give them some additional security by knowing the checkboxes to select. So within Mazévo, there's basically three types of primary roles: the the global admin, the event planner, and the requester. Those are the primary user roles. Now, you don't have to just give somebody one of those, and you also don't have to give somebody any of those. And that'll come to light as we go through the other two presenters today. But global admin is the easiest to give because you don't have to think about, well, what am I want to let these people have access to? Now, if your team is small and everything, you might have some more global admins. But global admin is giving access to all the functions under your license for configuration and for operational use. So there's no restrictions whatsoever. You don't limit them to any kind of time of day or anything, history or any of that kind of stuff. So again, pretty straightforward. You just give them access to everything. Now, the other pieces, oops, I'm sorry, I flipped my screen so I could see. The other parts, the event planner and the requester, those are where you kind of get the mix into who's going to do what and where you can have additional things. And again, the other presenters will give some more details into those. But at high level, the event planner is typically an administrator, mostly probably for an operational kind of thing, but you can assist with configuration roles if you need to. You don't have to. But a primary thing for an event planner is that maybe they are not for all of your rooms or all of your requests that come in. Maybe they're for specific buildings or even more so down to specific rooms. You could actually have an event planner that is approving one room within Mazévo. There is a configuration capability of that. That would then also give them access to edit events and or requests within that same space. So we do have that event planner that can be very broad in their security that they are given across multiple buildings and rooms or limited to small numbers of buildings and rooms. And they will work through the operational processes. Now, there is also an event planner that can be a view-only event planner, which just gives them access to view throughout all of Mazévo. You don't limit it by the building or anything. You just give them access to view, but they can't edit. So there's some management level positions probably that might do well with that as what within the Mazévo. Now, the other third primary role is the requester. These are the people that are simply making requests for space. And again, Matt will go through the details of that, but really you're limiting them to some rules that they have to follow when they are making requests. And they cannot edit anybody's events except the ones that they are the primary contact of. If they're a secondary contact, they can view some events that they're on as the secondary contact, but they can't edit those. And lastly, with regards to the roles, we have made a function in the system that allows an administrator, whether you're an event planner or a global administrator, the ability to also be a requester. And that helps with maybe testing out some new configuration and things like that, applying a security policy. And that way you can see what your requesters are actually seeing on their screen. Okay. So I'm going to show you just a little bit about the screens themselves rather than just the simple presentation piece. So everybody knows where the settings are, and where we are all talking about today is within our user settings. So we're in our user menu. Now I've got a couple of different accounts in here for different things. You can also, if I'll just show this real quick, if you don't want to, or don't know this, you can actually filter this list by who is in which role. So if I do want to see who all my global administrators are, I can just pop that in and see which ones pop up to show that. Okay. But I'm going to actually use my secondary account here to show you these primary roles. Now here it is configured. We have the checkbox for global administrator. We have the checkbox for requester, and we have the checkbox for event planner. So in this instance, this event planner can create events, not just view them. If I view them, I'm not going to get building selection, but I am going to create some. So therefore, that means that this event planner manages rooms within certain buildings. Now, if I'm not responsible for all the rooms within a building, then I might need to build a security tag, okay? And this would then say that, oh, I only need to go to those rooms. So it could be rooms across multiple buildings, like one room in each building or something like that, or maybe it's a subset of rooms within a building. So then I could select that I need to be also manager of those rooms. Now, when you are an event planner with edit capabilities to create and manage and approve these events in these spaces, if you happen to have an event that comes across and it's in one of your spaces for one booking, but maybe another booking is not, then you will not be able to edit that other booking. You will only be able to edit the booking for which you have control over. Okay. I'm removing the event coordinator piece there. That's just a title. I did want to mention, however, when you do select somebody as a global administrator, that event planner goes away. So you can't select to be a global administrator and event planner. And it's because it's somewhat redundant, because a global administrator can do everything an event planner can do and is not limited. Okay. But as a global administrator, if I need to also look and test how our requesters see things, I can be a global administrator and a requester. I can be a view-only requester, which then tells the system says, well, what security policies am I following for what they can view? And that's where you will select the security policy. If I'm allowing them to create requests, then I also have to select a security policy, which has the rules. The other option is that I can, if I'm not a global admin, administrator, I can be an event planner, and I can be limited to some buildings, but maybe in those other buildings, I need to be a requester. So I need to select them to be a requester to create requests and use maybe that particular staff policy for the rules on the rest of the buildings. So that's kind of the primary functions that we have to select for a user when we get them created in here. Now, for those of you that have SSO, the default for auto creation of an SSO account will automatically set somebody up as a requester, and it would be a view-only requester unless you have some default policy selected. So just a little additional tip there, okay? So that's the primary roles. I'm going to turn it over next to Angela to go into additional security pieces, unless there's any questions before I need to stop.
No questions so far.
Okay, great.
Great. Thanks, Joe. All right. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some other security roles that can be configured within Mazévo. And as Joe said, you've got that ability to assign one or more security roles to a user's account. I got to move people out of the way here so I can. Okay, so each user account can be assigned one or more roles, and depending on the permissions that you need them to have, you may want to provide limited access for some users. And so these can be standalone options, or they can be layered on with those primary roles that Joe reviewed, the event planner and the requester. So I'm going to review these other security roles: reporting, invoicing, operations, approvers, and academics. So in my first example here, I guess think about, do you have campus partners that are receiving reports from you already, or do you have data, maybe data analytics teams? Maybe you're creating those reports, but could you give them access so they could create their own reports? Just thinking about how you might improve your efficiencies there a little bit. This is an example of where I have set up a user that only has the ability for reporting. So their main menu has got all the report options. I've selected all 4 of them here. But you can even select, one or 2 of these. They can be a publisher. They can be a viewer. And so the publisher could actually create and publish reports. The viewer would be able to view those published reports. Or then you could give some analytics ability to somebody to go in and search for those things that people are emailing you all the time and saying, can you send this report to me? And similarly, we also have billing and invoicing. Maybe your finance team would like to have access, or you'd like to give your finance team access to invoicing and deposits and payments. So if they're looking for documentation or reports, this might be helpful if they had access. And very similarly here, this is what the invoicing column looks like if you do provide that billing or invoicing option to them. And this, under the other securities, you can see where I have checked that box. Operations. I'm sure a lot of you have team members who deliver equipment or set up your spaces. And this is where you can provide that access to that operations team. And again, there's different layers of this operations depending on the permissions, depending on what roles each of those people have. You can have a service reviewer, so they can review the list of events and services. You can also have a service manager, and that allows them to define those service staff and also assign that staff to an event. And then the service worker, typically your student allows them to view the list of events that they need to set up for the day or that they've been assigned, and then they can mark those events as completed. And so this example is a service manager. I've given all three options to this user, and this is what it looks like when they log into Mazévo. I would say one of our most common use cases is that you may have a student staff that is a service worker, but maybe they request space for their student organization. So this is an example of where we've layered on that access. You can see that they have the operations menu and the request menu. So I've made them a requester, given them the student organization security policy, and then I've assigned them a service worker under the other security roles. So this is an example where that layering can happen. This example is for approvers. So I'm not sure if everybody on the call is using the approver option, but maybe your catering team or your risk management team needs to review review and approve a request before you confirm it. So this is that secondary approver process. And if you're not using it and you're interested in learning more, please reach out to some of us and we're happy to walk you through that two-step process. But in this scenario, what I did is I made this catering user a view-only event planner, which gives them the ability to go search for events. So like Joe said, they can't edit the events, but they can search for events under Find Events or the event book or the event calendar. But then they also have this approval, secondary approval access. All right, a couple more here. This is an example similar to what Joe was talking about, where you've got an event planner that has limited access to the spaces that they're managing or that they can book space in as an event planner. But I have also given them a security policy as a university department, so they can book space in other places on campus. And then I also added reporting to this specific user. So event planner for this student center, they can manage the events there, make edits in that space, but then they can request space across campus, but also reporting. So as you see, we have lots of different options here. I did want to just bring up academics. I'm not sure how many people on the call are using the academics tool, but if you are, you do again have the ability to assign those users to 3 different security levels. So I've selected all 3 for this academic user, but there are ways for you to layer that on. You can have the manager that can create terms and import course data. You can have the planner that can view and manage the course events, or then you can have that academics piece. So they have access to the, the advanced academics. They have access to the analytics. Okay. And last slide, I wanted to talk about the administrator piece. We have kind of beaten it into you about the global administrator and how you want to try to avoid giving everybody global administrator access. So if you are a global administrator, you're seeing a screen like this with all of these settings, these setting options. But if you've got somebody on your team that, you can't do everything, right? So you might need some help. You need somebody maybe to help you manage those event questions and scheduled emails, those type of things. So maybe you're going to give them the event administrator, or you have a calendar manager and you want to give them the calendaring piece, or even somebody who you need help managing the services and the resource inventory. So you could give them that service administrator. So again, these are other layers you can add on to everything that I showed you and everything Joe showed you, and then add this in addition to that. So lots to think about. We've got some knowledge base articles also, and I will put those in the chat so you have a link to those articles that'll give you more information about what I just reviewed. All right, and I am going to pass it over to Matt.
All right. So gone through setting kind of your back end users there. Now we are going to talk about the requesters. So requesters are typically making up a large portion of your user base. So we want to make sure that we have the right settings and rules set for them. So I'm going to go through and go to my settings, and then down at the bottom, we've seen this area before. We're going to go to our security policies. And a security policy is what allows us to put our rule sets in place for a specific requester. Here we can see that there are 3 security policies, and a security policy kind of acts as a framework for the specific rules that we're going to configure here next. Going into a security policy, I can see that there are some options available for each one. In this display section, I can see the tools that will show for any user that gets assigned this security policy. These are the tools in that drop-down requester menu, and you can toggle on which ones you want. Up here, there are a few more fields and options for requesters as they're going through that request process. On here, we can see that there is a show billing code. So that billing code associated with an organization is going to be showing on that security policy. If we go to the student security policy, we'll see that that option is not showing. So again, great configuration options in this initial framework. Now, before we go any further, I do want to show that there is an advanced showing right here. But we also have a standard option for security policies. So this option is you can also have additional security policies, but this is going to have a few less settings that you need to configure in order for your security policy to be finalized. You can still restrict what's coming through with some time frames, but your buildings are going to include, or your rooms are all going to be included in a single building. It's building toggles for this. Whereas advanced, which we'll continue going through, we can go room by room and put rule sets in place for each room. So let's go forward and build those room sets. Now, on the left side of your screen, you're going to see kind of the steps going here and what we recommend when building your security policy. So we're in the security policy, we build our framework. The next is going to be our global room security groups. Here, the Global Room Security Groups button takes us into this page. You will see the list of your global room security groups, and you can add a new one with that button. Now, before we go forward, I do want to emphasize, if you are putting a room into a global room security group, you want that to have the same rule set across each of those security policies. If you're going to have specific access for different security policies in the same room, we don't want to add those in here. It's going to be the same access across your policies. So let's open up one of these global room security groups. Here we can see that this is in a request mode. So this is the rule set on our details tab right here. It could be a reserve or request mode. This is in request. It's going to need an event planner to look over this and give an approval before this event can proceed and get that confirmed state. Over here are where you can set some of the rules. So you can put a booking time frame in here. We can see that there are specific times for this specific security group. There's also a 3-day minimum time. So you have an earliest booking, and there's a hard last booking date here. There are a couple more options, which we'll talk about here soon. But once we create our rule set, we then apply the rule set to our rooms. And very simple to do that. We just go to our rooms tab, and you can see there are some rooms that are already set here. In order to put a room into a rule set, you just check the box. That's all it is. You just check whatever box, and you are able to add that in there. Now, as I said, when we first got onto global room security groups, you can only have that room in a global security group, but it can also only be in one group. This is a check that the system gives you saying like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? You can say yes before you move on there. Now we have created our global room security groups for all of those spaces that have that like access across our policies. So let's go and add some additional security groups. And to do that, we'll just go here to our security groups column on a security policy. We'll click the highlighted number, which is going to open up a page with 3 tabs. We'll go through this room security groups tab in a second. I want to first highlight this global room security groups. So this one is what we just looked at. In order to add these on there, just a quick checkbox, and you have now brought those spaces, those rooms, into this security policy. Users that get this security policy will now be able to request the rooms within the rule set that we already saw. Going back to our room security group, we can open up one of these specific groups, and then we see a similar page to what we saw with the global room security group. This one is in a reserved mode. So we'll see that this will not need to get any review before it is approved. We still have some booking timeframes. They could reserve this space without any limit as to how quick it is, but there's also only 30 days in the future. We do have a max time block, so this event can only be 2 hours long here. Now, these options, the max daily, weekly, and monthly hours, that is going to apply that limit to the user. So if you were to set a daily hour, that will apply it onto the user template. It's not, or onto the user. It's not going to be an organization. It's that user specific. Once we have created our rule sets, similar to global room security group, but here you'll want to create all of your kind of rule sets first, and then you can go here to your rooms. And similar to what we saw before with global room security groups, you can just check a box and you would be able to assign one of those additional room security groups right here. You can also remove those. You see the action toolbar that always pops up in Mazévo whenever you hit that checkbox. I do want to highlight here, let's see all of our spaces that have room security groups applied. You can see this over here. The options that do not have a checkbox, that's coming from those global room security groups. As I said, you can't edit those in here, where these additional ones, you could go and change that to a different group or remove those. So that's kind of how you create those rule sets, first the global room security group, and then additional ones. Now, let's put in a rule set for our service providers. So go to our Manage Service Providers button, and in this dropdown, we will see all the service providers listed for us. You are able to apply a rule for each security policy to a specific service provider, and that's going to put a minimum time frame for them to be able to add anything from that service provider onto a request. Now, event planners could always operate inside that deadline, but this is, again, just for requesters that we're looking at right now. So here we can see that faculty, staff, and this special access template, they would have to make a request that is more than 2 days in advance to be able to add AV services. Students, you got to do a little bit quicker, got to get a little bit earlier to be able to add that. So let's go and add in some rules for catering here. So you can check a box, and again, it's our action toolbar. I'm going to apply it to all of our security policies here, and I'm going to say that we need to put a week in advance for any catering to be added by that requester there. Now, with these service providers, they could still request a room based on the rule set that we already saw. Again, this is just specific to the service provider. So they could make a request, put in that and reserve or request the room, but service provider is what is managed here. Once you have all of these set, you can click this view and quickly go and see every rule that you've applied to a security policy. So we have discussed how to create the policy. We have a framework. We have our rule sets for rooms and service providers. Now you need to apply the policy. And so there are a couple ways to do that. We'll first talk about single sign-on. So if we are using single sign-on to authenticate your users, there will be a single sign-on option for you here. On this page, we see security policy. We see the attribute name and attribute field. We are using the attribute combination of a name and value to then assign a security policy when that user logs in. So these attributes, this is going to be something that is being sent with your SSO data. So talk to your IT SSO specialist and figure out exactly what's included there. It could be even just a collection of letters and numbers sometimes, but it has to be the exact name and value that's coming through to assign these. So we can see there are two actual attributes coming through that we are setting security policies for. One is classification, and we can see there's a few different options. Could be student, faculty, or staff. And the second one here is this is using the department as an attribute. So you're probably thinking, well, what if there is someone who is included in both of these groups? So it's a student, but they're also an employee in this scheduling office. Well, you can set the sort order to decide what security policy is going to be assigned. So essentially, which of the combination of the attribute name and value will first be used to assign the policy. Use our set sort order here in order to do this. And right now, that example of that student, because it's going top to bottom in terms of how we're processing the security policy to assign, that student would get that student's policy right here. Now, to change this, you just drag and drop. And so then if this was the order, they would get that special access template security policy assigned. So really easy to set exactly what you want here. Now, if there is a user coming through for single sign-on and they do not have any of these combinations for the attribute name and value, we can still set a default policy for them to have assigned to them. Click on our security policy, and we will be able to just click this button right here, and that will assign to new users for single sign-on whenever one of those attribute combinations does not hit. I do want to talk about overriding any single sign-on application of a policy. And there are a couple ways you can go look at things. First, I want to show this users tab before we move on. So this is a nice tab that will show your full user list. You'll have a lot more than this, but you could do this to do any mass changes that you want for security policy. So let's say I wanted to change everyone from this faculty staff security policy to a different one. So I use my search bar, get our action toolbar, and you could assign a different one using this. We'll also go back to our settings and users though, and this is where you could also do individual kind of overrides. And so on this page, there is an SSO column that we can see right here, and there's a little icon. And so if a manual override is put on a user record, you will see this. We'll go in here, and it's under the security tab that we've seen from both Joe and Angela is where this is happening. But let's say that you don't want this override to happen anymore. You want SSO to assign the specific policy. Really easy to go back on that. You just click this box right here. And the next time that user logs into the system, SSO process that we put in place will assign them the correct policy. The last thing I'll talk about here is just processing new users. You'll be able to see kind of your list here. Dean's going to talk a bit more, but you'll see that this shows in the same user list that we're going through, and there's a nice checkbox for you there. So that's how we kind of create all of our request security policies for any rooms and for our service providers. Are there any questions we need to go through before we pass it over to Dean?
Nothing so far.
Okay, fantastic. On to Dean for some more tips and tricks.
More tips and tricks. Here we go. Let me share my let me get a couple things out of my way. So I'm in users here, and I'll just kind of piggyback on where Matt was at. I'm in a different tenant, but you'll get the idea here. These two users are needing processing. So we can set the system up where a new user that comes through SSO or a new user that requests an account from a vanity page will get marked and flagged as a new user, and they sit here and they're waiting for somebody to process them. Well, what this process really does is all it's going to do is come in and say, what organization is this person with? Because we need to connect Dean, this user, to an organization so that they can actually make a request. Okay. So we can come in here and say, well, Dean's with the chess club. And now when I save this, the magic little process button goes away, and I've been assigned, my contact record has been assigned to the chess club. And now I can go in and start making requests on behalf of the chess club. So that's really all that's doing. So it's a flag. It's super easy. If you're not using that, we can turn it off. Just let us know. The other thing you can do is if you get a whole bunch of these and you just want to clean them out, if you have SSO working and then you have, depending upon how you've got your system configured, you just may want to come in here and mark it as reviewed, and that takes that same process and kind of gets rid of it. So it's just a little checkbox that says, hey, there's a new user you should look at, and you can assign them an organization, or you could have overridden the policy that was assigned by SSO. So nothing too fancy there. Um, Another thing, if you're adding users, um, we get this a lot as a support ticket. Hey, I can't add a new user in here. And we'll see this when people kind of convert from another system. Um, if it's telling you you can't add the user and you can't find them in the list, that's your clue to come over here and say, well, let me see if they're inactive. So this filter of inactive is always, this is on all sorts of stuff in configuration, but in users, you'll see these other users that are in the system. Uh, so I could not add Brian.peck again because the user's already there. It's just marked as inactive. If you find this and you go, oh, well, Brian needs to get back in the system, all you have to do is come in here and make Brian active again. You probably want to double check that they've got the security that you expect, and you hit save, and now Brian's account's back and is active again. So a couple little things for you there. Let's see. Let me go show you a couple of other tools here. Up under this setting, this little drop down up here, everything underneath profile and preferences is only available to global administrators. So I kind of want to go through a couple of these with you. Account settings. This is where you're going to set your logo and color. This is a shout out from me as a support. Really love it if you go in here to this login setting. And again, you have to be a global administrator. If you put an email and a phone number and any kind of notes here, we're the only ones that see this. So when one of your users is having trouble getting in the system, or they don't dig very deep on your website to find out where they need to go, they'll click a button and go over to Mazévo site and say, hey, I can't log in. And we come here first and look and say, well, who should we direct them to inside your organization? So this is just a helpful thing for us. If you could fill that out, we'd love it. So here's some other things up here. I'm not going to go through all of these, how you configure it. Most everybody's got that configured, but I just want to kind of spin through some of these other ones. Account info basically tells you how many rooms you're licensed for and how many you're using. So in this case, I have an unlimited number of rooms. This is my little demonstration system, and I've got 16 used in the system. So if you're in your system, it would tell you how many extra rooms you have. Most everybody is whatever they're licensed for is what they've used. You know, there are some exceptions to that. And we can always add additional rooms at any time. That's really easy to do. Claire can help you with that. Security log. This is more for the IT folks. If they're like, I want to know when somebody logged into Mazévo, you can actually come in here and see login activity by date by user of when they logged in and logged out. So this is more for your IT security team if they wanted to see that. So that's there. Closing a building. This is different than building hours, and it's different than room closures. This is designed for emergency closures. So it was designed for one of our school districts, and on a snow day, and they're closing school, they want to be able to go in and flip the status of confirmed to canceled or to some other special status for everything in a particular building because the building's closed. Maybe it was a snow day, maybe there was a water main break or something, and they need to close the building and they want to get that all of those bookings out of the way so that they can then go notify the user. So this really is changing the status of bookings in a building on a particular day. Check configuration. This is more for Mazévo support, but it just kind of tells you, are you missing anything that's key that may mess up your system? So you have expired policies. So what this like the second one right here is saying, I've got a hard date I won't let this policy book beyond a certain date, and it's already in the past. So that's going to prevent them from using some of your space. So that's an example. There's a knowledge base article on what all of these mean. So check configuration, we are just there. Admin tools, the two that I'd point you to here are probably merge contact, merge organizations. Occasionally you're going to get some duplicates in there, depending upon your event staff. If they're just typing in new contacts or new organizations, you might find that there's duplicates. And this is a way that you can merge them together, and it brings all of the events from the old contact to the new contact. I won't go into too much detail there. Event import does what it says. You can bring in bookings and events through a flat file. Delete old events. I'd encourage you to read the KB article on this. This goes and cleans up all of your old bookings. So if you wanted to delete event data, say prior to 12/31 of 2019, you could use this utility and it would clean up everything prior to that. What that does is it allows you to go clean up other records in settings. Let's say you've got an event type that was used on an old event back in 2019 and you don't use it anymore and you had to disable it so you stop people from using it, but you just want to get it out of the system, but it's tied to an old event. So deleting your old events first allows you to clean up some of that other configuration. The last one to talk about here is API keys. If you're doing any kind of integration to other systems, you can create your API keys here, and it gives your integrator specific access to certain API calls, so you can kind of control what they have access to. But that's kind of what I wanted to show you here in a nutshell. So I'll flip it back over to Brian. We'll just kind of open it up for some questions.
All right. Thanks, Dean. Good stuff. So there is a question here. Julie put in a question, and I'll throw it out to whoever wants to take this. But she's wanting to know if it's possible to grant visibility of a specific room to a requester while making sure that other requesters can't see that room. Somebody want to talk about how you would do that?
So do you want them just to see it, or do you want to be able to request it? Go ahead and unmute yourself there.
I want them to be able to request it and see that room when it's available, but just one person.
Sure.
Besides.
Yeah, you can do that. What you would do is where Matt showed you the security policies, you would create a special security policy that would have that one extra room in it that nobody else can get to, and you would assign that one policy to that special user, and that's how you would do that. Nobody else would get that policy. So you'd manually create that policy. I'd recommend you copy one of your existing policies to a new policy and then add that one extra room in it so that you can do that. So, but that's how you would do it. So yes, the answer is yes, you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. I know we covered a lot of ground here today. The one thing I did want to say, if you're kind of, you've listened to all this stuff and you're like, oh boy, that's a lot. I wanted to kind of leave you with just a simple takeaway of something that you can do to just kind of see how you're doing on the user security side. So my suggestion would be, first, just go into your list of users and look at who has global administrator access today. So you saw how you can go in and filter the list by just global administrators. Look at that list. And that's the first step. Just look at who all is a global administrator, and then just see how that makes you feel. Are you happy with that list? Are there people that you're like, yeah, they shouldn't be a global administrator? But the first step's always awareness. You just got to be aware. It's like, what are we dealing with right here? And then the next step is, if you find yourself as one of those folks that I talked about early on, which is like, yeah, we've got way too many global administrators in here. Well, now you could maybe just take a couple of them. Just start with like 2 or 3 and just step their access down, maybe make them an event planner or whatever's appropriate for their role. and just stop there. Dean's a huge fan of saying, start small, build on success. Says that a lot. We do that a lot here at Mazévo. So don't do it. Don't think, oh my God, I got to do it with all of my users or anything like that. Just take a couple and, move them down, and then give it a few days or a few weeks, and just, make sure everything's working the way you want. Then you can go in and take care of the rest. But I think just kind of chipping away at it in a small way would make this, hopefully an easier process for you. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. So if we don't have any other questions, we can go ahead and wrap things up. I do want to say thank you to all of our presenters here today for presenting, and for everybody for attending. I hope you got something out of this. If you do still have questions, maybe you get back to your work and you're like, oh, geez, I already forgot what, this thing means or whatever, just email us. Just send us an email to support or call us, whatever. We're happy to help you out. Or if you want somebody to just talk through this stuff with you, we're always here to help. So don't be afraid to reach out that way. Yeah, and we will be doing this again next month at the end of July. Topic will be disclosed here probably next week. I'll let you know once I send out the recording of this meeting what our topic will be for next month. By the way, if you ever have suggestions for a topic, or there's something that you'd really like to hear us talk about in one of these webinars, shoot us a line, let us know. We would love to address that if we can. So anyways, everybody enjoy your summer, and I hope things are going well, and we'll see you maybe next month. Thanks a lot.
There's one more, Brian.
Oh, there is.
Let
Okay.
me answer.
There's one more.
Dean's on it. Dean's already
Okay,
on it. See,
okay.
I was busy doing my spiel and I wasn't paying attention to the
Oh, no worries. Dean got it.
chat
Never
here.
mind. Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yep.
Bye.